Morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Houchins. I'm a tech and a trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino for Windows. Today, we're going to build a little toy character. Anybody who knows anything about me knows I spent most of my career in the toy industry, and I still have, at least my heart is still in the toy industry, if not the rest of me. And so we're gonna jump into that world for a second, and I want to demo a lot of the new features that are in Rhino 8. Push-pull we're going to talk a lot about push-pull today. We're going to talk about inset. We might talk a little bit about shrink wrap, but I definitely want to cover some of the stuff that's new in 8. If you haven't checked out 8, it is out and for sale, and you should definitely grab the 90-day trial and give that a shot, and let us know what you think. So with all of these getting started videos, we do the same thing. Either the night before or the day of, I do a little sketch. I think about it for about 2 seconds while I'm doing the sketch, and then I put the sketch away. And the reason that I do that is because I want to put myself in the same position that you're in when somebody walks into your office, drops a sketch on your desk, and says, please build this. And you have to analyze it and think on the fly and do all that kind of stuff. So with everything that I build, if you see any of these videos along the way, we start with the picture command, and we're going to find the little sketch, and I'll work in the front view, and I'm just going to click and drag and drop this picture in the front view. And this is a sketch I did just a few minutes ago. And what we're going to do is build this little character, and he's a little mini figure for a building set. And one of the things that bugs me about the existing things that are for some of these building sets is that the guys don't have any knees. So we're going to talk about how to put knees in this guy. And we might do arm articulation too. I don't know. We'll take a look at it and see if that's even mildly feasible. But if not, we're going to build a few little accessories and then talk about how to put this together. And this character is actually kind of interesting from a Rhino 8 point of view, because it is essentially just like a clinic in push-pull. So we're gonna go ahead and talk a lot about that. We'll also use a lot of the new gumball features, which are there's a wire cut feature that's new on gumball in 8. There's also some solid transformation tools that we'll talk about and stuff like that. So, all right, so let's get started with this. And I brought this picture in using the picture command, and when the first thing I'm going to do is just drop that on a layer by right click, and then I'm going to say change object layer. And now this lives here. I'm going to double click. I'm going to change this name to image so I know that it's there. And then we're going to go to the material stack, and if you don't have any of these tabs down, right click on any of the tabs that are existing, or sorry, right click down here in an open space and use show panels. You can also do that from up here, Windows panels, all of this stuff, and that will pop open those, and then you can dock them over here. If something pops up over here and it's not docked and you want it docked, if you grab it, and this is new for 8, if you grab it by the title bar, you can see that it will actually dock underneath the container that you had before. If you grab it by the tab, you can drag it over here and actually stick it inside another container, which allows it to stack. So these are called containers now. The things inside are called panels, and then inside the panels can be toolbars. And so that's kind of the new way that this stuff is all organized, which is different from 7. All right, so let's take a look at this material. So this picture frame material, this picture material comes in, and it actually creates its own material. And if we click on it, we've got some settings in here, and you can see that it's a picture material. And I'm just going to crank the transparency up a little bit so that it fades so that I can draw over it. I'm going to go back to the layer stack, and I'm just going to lock this guy. And now he's locked. Actually, I'm going to unlock him. I'm going to center him up a little bit because this is a symmetrical dude. So I'm going to try and stick him right over the origin to make my life a little easier. I'm going to nudge him just a little bit using arrow keys, and that's mildly centered, so we'll just go ahead and drop that. Now, this guy, if we look at it, it's actually pretty simple, and the crux of this build is going to be the articulation on the knees and making sure that that actually works. And so what we're going to do is let's start with the lower body, and let's do the hard stuff first, and then we'll do the fun stuff later. So I don't have any dimensions on this, and so I'm going to just guess. I'm not even going to try and throw dimensions on it. If you were going to build this to integrate with, your own building system, no matter what it is, you would obviously take some time to figure out what the units are for all that kind of stuff. But for this demo, I'm not even going to worry about it. So I'm not going to do anything other than show the build. So let's start with an object that's centered, and I'm going to just start with a center rectangle. I'm going to go to 0, and I'm just going to drag out a box, and that is going to be kind of the gatekeeper for my symmetry and kind of the foundation of what I'm going to build off of. And I like this for 2 reasons. One, because center boxes are easy. The other thing is, with the O-snaps on, they have midpoints and quads and edges and all that kind of stuff that are easy to snap from. So I can easily go from the midpoint, and I can drop a line down here, and I know that that's the center of my object. The other thing is I can take this, copy paste, and I can click on this and hit 90, and then I know I've got exactly centered, for the centerpiece here. I can shift control drag to sub-object select, move this down. So I've got this little T shape, and yeah, sure, I could have come up here and drawn this with a polyline and all that kind of stuff, but then I would have had to pay attention to symmetry and all that kind of stuff. If I grab these 2 objects and run curve Boolean, which I am always amazed at how few people know about curve Boolean. Curve Boolean, I'm going to delete the inputs, is basically a mega trim, right? We can take curve Boolean and we can pile a bunch of stuff on top of each other, and then we can run curve Boolean and it trims it all together. And my favorite demo for curve Boolean is a gear. And basically, if I make a little circle here, I'm already side questing, but let's do this. Let's array, transform array, duh. Not bad for my first day in Rhino, huh? And let's do this, and let's do like 30, and let's let that run. Oops, 30 is too many. Let's do 20. And we say, okay. Now, if we were going to do this normally, right, we'd have to trim. It would make us crazy, right? If we just do curve Boolean, I can either click outside and get the trace of the outside, or I can click inside and I can get the trace of the inside. And in this case, I want the outside. I'm going to delete all. Boop. 2 clicks, we get a gear, right? So this works for all sorts of curve stuff, and I just really want to show that every time I do it because it's an amazing tool, and I'm always stunned at how few people actually know it exists. So the other thing that I need to do is, because I don't have a depth dimension on this and I only have this front view, I need to kind of determine a depth. And I do have a little section on the leg here, which is determined by this, this kind of barrel right here. And so I'm going to do a little mystery science theater modeling here, where I come up here and I'm going to just say, okay, that's about the top, that's about the bottom, right? And then if I go to the perspective view, I can click on this and I can rotate it 90 in the Z, and that's going to essentially be my depth, right? Because I don't want it to be, too much deeper than that. So what I can do is I can grab this guy and I can use gumball and I can snap it to this quad. And one of the setting that allows you to do that, if you right click in this menu ball, is this snappy dragging. And I use this all the time. I wish it was the default, but I think the default is smooth dragging. But snappy dragging, what it does is it allows it to respond to O-snaps. And the reason I like that to respond to O-snaps is because I can drag this around in space and I can find things to snap it to. So I know that this point, this thing, because it's flat, is aligned with this quad on this thing. So I know that that thickness is correct. And then if I grab this little menu ball down here, or this little extrude ball, I can extrude forward with O-snap, and I can snap that to the front of this. And I know that the thickness of this and the thickness and the width of this are going to match. And I'm going to go to the right view and hope that it doesn't make me a liar. And we can see that these match. Okay? It's almost like I know what I'm doing. All right, so then we're going to just take this barrel, or this circle, and I'm going to just use the extrude dot to come out here like that, and I'm going to snap it to that, and I know that that fits right in there, right? So I'm snapping to the midpoint on this. And my edges don't align here, so I'm actually gonna shift command click this face, go to the front view. I'm gonna grab gumball, and I'm gonna use my O snap to snap that to the end snap there. And because I'm constrained in the Z direction at this point, I know that it's only gonna go up and down, and then I know that everything is now starting to line up, right? So we're sailing here, right? And so now one of the things that I want to do is I don't want these edges on this. And what I can do is I can take this curve, which is what I used originally to make this thing, and I can move it off here like, nope, got history on it. So let's kill history. I've got a command set up for purge history, so I'm just going to move that off there, and then that can move independently. So I want this now to cut through that, but if I just shoot it through, I'm going to take a circle out of this, and I don't want that. So I'm actually going to modify this, and I'm going to snap to the quad there, and then I'm going to snap to this quad here, and I'm going to use these two and trim the top off. Then I'm going to take this and join it. Now I'm going to use this cutter. And this is where the fun begins. So I'm going to hide this. And this cutter will go through everything it touches. So I'm going to grab this new little icon right here, and I'm going to just zing that through, and it cuts the bottom off. Okay? So it's like this wire cut that's built into Gumball, which I think is fabulous. What essentially, like, you know, our articulation setup is. And so if we were going to 3D print this or do anything like that, we may want to build a little bit of clearance in here. So I'm going to actually pick this thing. I'm going to double click the origin of the gumball, and I'm going to use O snap to bring it over here. Because you're going to see this little mismatch right here. I'm going to actually move that using O snap so that that lines up, but it's also giving me just a tiny bit of clearance in here. Okay, so I've built a little bit of clearance in here. If I was going to go 3D print this later or something like that, I would end up with, you know, something that would actually work. So let's go to the right view, and this is our front, if I'm oriented correctly in my head. So we're going to build the legs on this thing going forward. So I'm going to isolate just this guy, and we're going to go to the right. And let's just draw the legs out. And I'm going to snap to the quad. I'm going to draw down to here. And I can use a grid snap if I wanted to really be precise. And I'm going to figure, let's give him a decent foot so he doesn't fall over. Something like that. And then I don't know how high this is supposed to be. So I'm going to just come up here and snap there. And let's go back to the right view. And then I'm going to come up here and say probably something like that feels kind of footy, right? Somewhere in there. I don't want to come all the way up here. Maybe just in a little bit. And this is a lot of eyeball science at this point, but that's how we're going to roll for today. So now I'm going to take this, and I can use this extrude dot, and I can just use O snap to drag that out, and I've got the basis for my object. Now, somebody's going to hit the comments and be like, you just draw the whole thing and extrude it out. Yeah, exactly. We could have done that. But I like this way because I like kind of doing things in chunks so that everything lines up and all that kind of stuff. So you do you, that's fine, but this is kind of how I'm going to roll. We're going to go ahead and Boolean these guys together. And you can see that there's a little discontinuity on this surface. I'm going to fix that with a command called merge all coplanar faces. Boop. And then it's going to go and merge all that stuff up. So anything that's planar, that's got a split in it, it's going to remove the split. You can see that this curve is now, you know, just kind of incidental at this point. So I'm going to get rid of it. And we've got our leg. Now let's look at this. Let's look at this lower leg articulation. And this articulation style is very common in any kind of action figure build or anything like that. And so what we want to do is we need to build what's called a T-slot in order for it to be able to rotate, but it has to rotate around a circle. So let's go to the right. Let's figure out where that circle is going to be. I'm going to use a 2-point circle for that, and I'm just going to snap from edge to edge. I'm not even going to worry about where the placement is. I'm just going to place it in space so that it's located about there. Now, you can see where the center of the circle is, right, by the arrow. So I'm just going to drag that up until it vaguely lines up with the sketch. And I always say when you've got a sketch, especially one that I've drawn, to use it as a guideline and not a law. You know, you need to look at it, because you can lie, cheat, and steal in a sketch. The model is where all of those lying, cheating, and stealings become available for view. So we want to make sure that we are, you know, being honest about how this thing is going to go. Now, I have the knee drawn with the circle part on the exterior, which is fine. I think that's okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to split this thing in half using this cut. So I'm just going to run this through there, and it made a hole, which is not necessarily what I wanted. So what I want to do actually is, instead of that, I want to do the same thing I did before, where I want to make this into a cutter, and I'm going to just split this in half like this. I'm going to join that, and I'm going to use this join, and then I'm going to use this as a cutter. Boop. I'm just going to slice that through there. And the cool thing about this is now this actually has a center point available to it, which is right there, which means if I set my gumball to that point, I can use this and I can rotate it, and I can see what this is going to do. Right now, we can already see that if we go into a 90-degree position, that he's going to kick himself in the center parts to keep it from being rude. And so I'm going to Control Shift drag this face, and I'm just going to move it. And now that's clearanced, and it's going to work. So I know that the foot is going to actually work. But I need to make sure that now that I have some clearance. So let's undo. Well, let's do this. Let's redo that. Let's go back to the front view. Any questions so far? Everybody still with me? And I'm going to just use the Shift key to spin that down. Yeah? Question? Okay. Feel free to jump in. Feel free to hit the chat. Is there any way of enlarging your screen? That is as big as the screen is going to go. That's full screen for me. All right. So this guy is essentially going to be the outsides of my T-slot. And so I'm going to isolate that. And this is going to have a slot dug out of it. So I'm going to start up here. And actually, let's do the same trick that we did before. Let's start with a center, because I know that there's a center point right here. And let's drag a box out, and we'll call it, I don't know, something like that. And, you know, if I was doing this for a client, I would 100% go through and actually measure all this stuff, but we don't have time for that stuff here. So I'm going to just take that, and I'm going to zing it through and cut it. And that is going to make my cut. So now I bring everything back, and I need to actually keep that piece, because that actually needs to go with the top. So let's undo that. And let's take that, and let's actually, because I want to keep that piece. So let's do this and this, isolate that. And And let's do we don't want that. Let's split this actually. Let's actually do a wire cut, but we're going to keep this. So this is actually a situation where we actually want to use the wire cut command. And so we're going to cut through here, and we're going to cut this object, and we're going to go all the way through it, and we are going to keep all. Now, the thing about keeping all is oh, they fixed that. It used to be that it would actually make a copy of the old thing, which is not necessarily what you wanted. And so so that was a little bit of a problem. So but it looks like that's working now. So the keep all just keeps the individual pieces. So that's going to work. So this is pretty much what we need to do, except for the fact that we actually need a circle at the bottom of this in order for that to be able to actually spin. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do a 2-point circle, and I'm going to snap it edge to edge. And it looks like it's, there we go. And then I'm going to cut from that side to this side, and it's going to dig that out. See that? This is all just gumball. How many? We haven't used any tools out of here, right? We've used like the box and gumball and a couple of circles, and we're sailing here. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller so that we have some clearance, and then I'm going to extrude it, and that's going to make the plug that I'm going to add to the leg. To go up here like this. Now, I've made myself a little bit of a mess here, so let's fix that. So I'm going to Control-Shift-Click-Delete, open that up, and I'm going to just use an edge surf, and I'm just going to put that back together, join, cap, merge all coplanar faces, and now we're kind of back in business. Now this guy, it's great that he's set up like this, but I don't like this little gap in here. So let's fix that, and I'm going to just do that from a midpoint snap, and I'm just going to draw up like this using Smart Track to line that up, and I'm going to just draw a box in there. I'm going to take that box, I'm going to extrude using O-snap, Boolean these together, Boolean this together, merge all coplanar faces, and I've got the basics. Now let's take a look and see what we did. And so I jumped the gun a little bit here. I actually needed that opening, but I think I want to have a little bit of clearance in it. So what I'm going to do is grab this, set my gumball here, and then I'm going to scale it, holding down Shift just a little bit. So now I've got a little bit of clearance in there. And so now I can take this, and let's go to isolate those two, and let's cut snapping to there, and it didn't do it. So it needed to go all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make myself a little Boolean cutter, and I'm going to do that by just adding some pieces in here. And let's go to the right view. And I'm going to join this. And then I'm going to do a little extrusion. And then I'm going to mirror this. And I've got those things the way I want them. So now I'm just going to do a Boolean subtract on these. And that should have gotten rid of all that stuff. All right, now I've got a little step here. Maybe I want to get rid of that, maybe I don't. If I do, I can just draw a little line and cut that. In fact, let's do that. I don't like that little step in there. It goes from here to here. So let's take that and just zing that off. And let's do the same thing on the back. And we're just using the cut command on the gumball to do that. You see how few tools I'm using? Like this is like really kind of luxurious to be able to just sail through this stuff. Now, if I test this, if I go to the right-hand view, and if my gumball is still set on the rotational center, but if it wasn't, I could certainly just change it to that. But now I can see that he makes a 90-degree turn, and he's kind of colliding with the front of this thing. So let's fix that. So let's just drag from here to here. We're going to make a cut out of that. I'm going to put this back where I found it. Come now, this way. There we go. And let's fix that part. Now, some of you might be much better at strategically doing this kind of stuff and think a lot farther through it. I tend to be a kind of put my face against the stove type of person to see whether it's hot. And I kind of end up finding the way along the way. It's just kind of the way I've always worked. And so if that's not your style, then so be it. I encourage you to find your own best path. All right. Now, it doesn't like partial cuts. Actually, it did because it's a closed object. Okay, fine. Look, we're learning together. And I'm going to stick this here, and then I'm going to just bring that out like that. Now, if we rotate, now we can sit. Hooray. All right. The last thing we would do is we would put a pin through here, and I might clean this up a little bit. I might look at this and say, maybe I don't like this transition. We can always adjust that or do whatever we want. But I think for now I'm going to just let that roll. So the last thing that we would do is we would put a pin through here so that we could actually articulate this guy. And I'm just going to pick a random size. I'm not worried about that. And I'm going to use this cutter, and I'm going to just shoot that through, and it's going to cut everything it finds. So anything it hits, it's going to cut. So just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to shrink this just a little bit, and then I'm going to use this to make a pin. And then I'm going to Control-Shift-Click, drag, snap it there, Control-Shift-Click that face, drag, snap it there. Now, one of the things that if you're trying to follow along and your O-snap jujitsu is not working, I run all of my O-snaps checked, but I run them disabled. And the reason I run them disabled is because the Alt key is the toggle for the enable disable. And so that allows me to be able to cruise around the scene. If I don't disable this, it's always like trying to figure out where it's going to snap to, and that makes me crazy. And so I much prefer running them disabled so that I can hold down the Alt key and light them up when I need them, but they're not lit up when I don't need them. And so so if there's a little disconnect between how I'm doing things and how you're doing things, that might be the difference. So this guy's pretty good. We've got he needs an articulation point at the hip, so let's go ahead and throw that in. And then we've got a center snap, so I'm just going to place that there. And it's going to remember the last diameter of the circle that I used, so I'm just going to start dragging the circle and then right-click. How are you switching back and forth between views so quickly? I actually have hotkeys set up for that. So in the options, aliases, I have all of my views set up. So F equals front, R equals right, T equals top. I have a back, and I even have a bottom somewhere. But that's how I'm doing that. So the way aliases work in Rhino, side quest, is every command in Rhino shows up in the command line. Okay? So if I pick, say for instance, a circle, in the command line, that is the command. It says command circle. So if I want to make an alias for circle, tools, options, aliases, I'm going to make a new one. Let's call it CR. It can be anything. It can be you can even type a word if you want. You'll notice a lot of mine are repeated, and the reason for that is S is one thing, SS is another thing, SSS is another thing. I like to use repeated keys because I don't like stretching my hand. Anything that makes your pinky and your thumb go in opposite directions is a recipe for a repetitive strain injury if you do this for a living. Ask me how I know. And so when you're making hotkeys, make sure that you are designing them in a way that it's not stressing the back of your hand. Don't spread your fingers apart to get to a hotkey. You will regret it if you've been doing this as long as I have. All right, so CR, and then I'm gonna just come up here, and I'm gonna look, and the command was circle, so I'm gonna just do underscore circle. Say OK. Now if I do CR, I get, oh, I spelled it wrong. Idiot. Oh my God, I hate it when my art school shows. All right, so let's do, if I hit F2, it brings up the command history, and I'm gonna just copy and paste. Oh God. I try to present myself as a smart person, I really do. And then I do stuff like that. I'm just like, I deserve all the hate I get online. All right, so we're gonna paste that there. It's a circle. CR enter, now circle shows up. All right, and the thing with aliases is that they always require an enter. So if it's hotkey, it's not a single hotkey. It's a hotkey plus an enter, which is a right click on the mouse or a tap on the space bar or the enter key. I use right click, so it's really fast. So that's how I'm changing views very fast, and that's how to quickly set up an alias. All right, let's go back to this guy. I'm going to just use the cutter. I'm going to blow all the way through here, boop, like that. I'm going to shrink this just a hair. And again, I should measure this. And I'm going to run that all the way through. And then let's mirror this. And then Control-Shift-Click. Align it with the end. Control-Shift-Click the face. Align it with the end. Now, the reason that these sub-object transformations work is because this is all degree 1 geometry, meaning it's not degree 3 geometry, so it doesn't have any curvature built into it. So this whole system, as far as like being able to shift, control, click, and move things, like if I want this face to be longer, I can pick it. That all works because this is all degree 1 geometry. It's very simple. It doesn't have curvature built into it. It will do it if it's got curvature built in, but sometimes you'll get some pretty significant distortion. So, but as it sits, this stuff works really well. Now, let's in the spirit of lying, cheating, and stealing, let's grab a face here, and I'm going to start dragging it up, and then I'm going to tap the Alt key, and you'll see a little plus symbol. I don't know if you can see that. See that plus symbol next to my cursor? That means that it's making a copy of this face. So I'm going to bring this up just a hair, and then that I just broke that face off and made a copy of it. I'm going to stretch this up. I'm going to go to my front view. I'm going to switch to wireframe. This is in my pop-up. That's how I'm switching to wireframe in and out pretty easily. And you can see that I'm a little bit off my sketch. So I'm going to scale this from the center. And I've got a couple of choices to make. I can either scale this out and then shift drag, select the top, and scale it in. But you'll see that this actually has a little bit of curvature built into it. And that character line actually may be important for this dude. So let's actually overbuild this a little bit. And let's make it a little bit bigger. And then let's do say, a 3-point curve, and let's add that curvature in. Let's assume that the designer wanted that. So I'm going to move this and mirror it both sides. The sketch isn't symmetrical, which is super awesome when people do that to you. And by people, I mean I did that to myself. And let's grab these. Let's slide them forward, and then I'm going to just use the cutter. Shoot it through there. Cut those off. So now we've got the correct shape, as long as we're paying attention to this side of the sketch and not that side of the sketch. Pay no mind to this right side of the sketch. And we've got our body. And it looks like there's some fillets and stuff like that, and we'll deal with that a little bit later. And maybe we want this to have a little bit of overhang so that he looks like his shirt is sticking out a little bit over his pants. Can play with that a little bit. Maybe there's some taper. I don't know if we want some taper in this guy or not. Maybe he's square. Maybe he's got some taper. If we go to the right view and I shift command drag this, I can scale it and add that taper, but it doesn't have any curvature in the front. And maybe I want some curvature in the front, maybe I don't. If I do want curvature, maybe I'm going to pull this out. And we'll do the same thing again. Add a 3-point curve. Maybe something like that. Maybe we'll give him a little, maybe he's a middle-aged race car driver. Maybe he doesn't have time to get to the gym so much. Maybe he's got life responsibilities that he has to pay attention to. Shoot those through, and we'll just cut these pieces off. All right. I mean, he's 52. Who's he trying to impress? Maybe I've shared too much. All right, let's go and add. I think I want this a little skinnier, so I'm just going to shift control drag. I'm going to bring that in. Now, because we are no longer doing 1 degree geometry here, look what happened. I don't know if you noticed that. See how there is, I'm going to hide the image for a second so you can see it. See how we've got one, essentially this is a single span object through here. If I scale this, look what happens. See how that surface rebuilds and we've got more spans in here? That's not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to be aware that it happens. Okay? And so if it's important for you to maintain that being single span, then you're going to need to delete that surface and remake it or rebuild it or do something. In this case, it really doesn't make that much difference, so I'm not going to sweat it, but it is something that you need to be aware of. If you do a sub-object selection, you do a sub-object transformation on a degree 3 object. Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say degree 1, degree 2, degree 3? Is that anybody confused about that? Don't be embarrassed if you are. Just let me know and I'll side quest on it. If not, then we'll just keep rolling. Yes, you know what it is, or yes, you want me to explain it? Explain. Okay. So when we talk about degree, and to be fair, like, okay, so anybody who, so Craig, thank you for answering. I'm glad that somebody did, because I spent a lot of time in my career not knowing this until I was actually teaching a class with Pascal and he explained it, and I was like, I've been doing this 20 years, and I finally figured it out. All right, so degree, when we talk about spans in a surface, right? A single span surface has one span to the top, one span to the bottom, right? Single span. These isoparams on the inside are spans. And the way spans are determined is it's the minimum structure of a curve to be able to get the shape you want. So a degree 1 surface has 2 points, and degree is determined by the degree has more than 1 point than the degree. So degree 1 surface or degree 1 curve has 2 points, right? I'm going to shut the gumball off so you can see what it's see. So in this case, and actually I've got mine set up. I've got mine set up to actually draw degree 3 curves or degree 3 lines. So let me get there we go. So a degree 1 curve has 2 points. A degree 2 curve has 3 points. And that's if we're doing single span. And a degree 3 curve has 4 points. So it's degree plus 1 equals single span. So if I do a degree 3 curve and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and I have another curve here, and I make a surface, and let's get this over here, and let's rotate that 90, and then let's mirror this. I'm just making a little single span rig here. Let's move this to that, and let's move this over there. There's probably an easier way to do that, but I was committed. All right, so now if I make a surface out of this setup, it's got one span in it, right? One span that way, one span that way. That is a single span surface. Isn't this about the degree of curvature of the spline? Not necessarily. It's just that, let's keep it simple in the fact that it's essentially, when I talk about a degree 1 curve, that means it's got 2 points. A degree 2 curve has got 3 points, and a degree 3 curve has got 4 points. So it's degree plus 1 points. And the result of this is going to be 4 points in that direction, 4 points in that direction. Now, the confusion comes from, you can have a degree 3 curve that has more than one span. So let's say, for instance, if I change, let's rebuild these two curves. Let's make them have, they're going to be degree 3, but let's make them have 6 points. And like that. All right, now if we make an edge surf out of this, you're going to see that it's going to be single span, and it's going to have more than one span. So this is no longer a single span surface. Okay, and that's the difference between what we had here, right? That's single span, and this, which is a multi-span. And so when you do that sub-object transformation on something that is degree 1, it can maintain that, right? So this is all degree 1, and if I move this, nothing happens. It doesn't rebuild. This, on the other hand, is not degree 1. In fact, if I break this surface off and I look at the stats on it, it's actually degree 1 in one direction, but it's degree 3 in the other. So that's why it's got one span down the center, and it's got more spans going this way. So it had to rebuild. So it's not a big deal. It really doesn't make a big difference unless you're like psychotic about single span modeling. But if you want to be a single span modeler, it comes down to, you need to understand that your curve can only have one more point than the degree that it is called, right? So 1 has 2 points, 2 has 3 points, 3 has 4 points, and so on. Okay, if you have more points than that, it's now a multi-span curve, and you'll get a multi-span surface like this one. All right, did I confuse everybody? Awesome. You can come back for the next video, and I'll try to make it more clear. Okay, fantastic. I feel like you're lying to me, but that's okay. All right, so let's go back to this, and let's bring this back. And for the head, this is just a simple revolved surface. And one of the things about revolves is we need to know where the center point is. So I'm going to drop a center, and I'm going to just start drawing here, here, and I can use the mode switch. I can hit the M key and get a surface here, but I actually prefer to do this just all straight lines, and then go back and fillet it later. So the M switches between straight lines and curved line segments, but I actually like doing this just straight and then going back and using fillets to get it, because I find it a little bit more kind of iterative, and I just, again, the way my brain works, like, that's too small, so let's do 0.04 and 0.4. I have no idea how big this thing is, so got lucky. 0.4 looks like that's about right, so let's do it here. And it's too big to fit in there, so let's actually go down one Maybe I should figure out what fits in the bottom first. Or actually, I like the 0.4 better. So let's do this. I'm going to just move this in a little bit. I'm going to move it in, and then we'll figure out where the fillet fits, and then I'll move it back. I never said it was a good process. I said it was my process. So I'm going to just snap that to the end there. All right, and then let's take this and trim that off there and there. Join it up. And let's revolve that. I'm just going to take this. Let's make sure that it's flat first, and it is. It's also not centered in the middle of the object, so let's do that. I'm going to snap that to the center, and then let's revolve it. And we're going to just do a full revolve. And it looks like we kind of overshot on that piece. So maybe we go back to the original curve. And if we grab those 2 points and drag them in a little bit, that's going to update with history because I remembered to turn history on before I did any of this. And anybody who's got any kind of like engineering bent, I'm sure is just cringing when I just drag stuff. Like, whee! To be fair, if I was getting paid for this, I would measure things. So, all right. So let's call that good. Maybe that looks a little thick. Maybe let's push this down like that, and then let's stick him on like that. All right. So that's the head, and then how are we doing on time? 9:04. Oh, we're doing good. All right, so let's make an arm. I'm going to do this with a control point curve, and I'm going to start way inside here, and then I'm going to come out, use 3 points for my shoulder, and then draw a straight line out here. And we're going to overbuild this significantly, and then come back and trim. And I'm going to use a pipe to make this. Just come down here, and that feels about right. Something like that. And it kinked up here in the corner a little bit. That's fine. We'll go back and fix that later. I'll show you how to do that. But I'm going to switch to wireframe, and I'm going to grab the original curve and turn the points on for it. And I'm going to iterate just a little bit. I actually want to rotate this, and I'm going to double click to move gumball up here. This is a new thing for 8, by the way, to relocate the gumball by that double click. And when I first started using it, I was like offended that they had changed gumball, and now I absolutely love it. I'm just going to adjust that just a little hair, and then same thing up here. I'm going to grab these points and adjust this a little bit. I want to get that shoulder a little closer to the sketch. And that's gonna kind of get it there. And that actually fixed our corner in here, but I actually wouldn't mind fixing that a little bit better. So let's isolate that and then use one of my other favorite tools, which is move UVN. So let's explode this, and I'm going to pick this and turn the points on. And let's take a look and see what that kink looks like. And it's okay, actually. It's not awful, but it could be better. So I'm going to just drag select all of these points, and then I'm going to run the move UVN tool, which lives down here, by the way. It lives. Oh, now I'm going to make a fool out of myself because I always pick it from the command line. Where is it? All right, you get what you pay for. These are free. So I'm going to pick these pieces. I'm going to pick the points that make up this pipe, and I'm going to just drag the U smooth. And look at how those just kind of redistribute a little bit. And it just modifies that just a little bit, smooths that out. I like that feeling a little bit. I like that feeling of that curve better than the one before, so that's what I'm going to use. If you had a pipe, for instance, that was really tortured, like let's do something really sharp and pipe that and make it big. This corner in here is always going to be problematic, and everybody does this and then ends up with a mess. If you take this and turn the points on, you can actually fix this with Move UVN. If you grab all of the stuff in here, leave the end alone because you don't want to move that one. But if we grab all the way out to here and then we smooth this, look, we can just untie that. Now, is that the shape you want? I don't know, but you can untie that stuff. And then same thing in here. If you want to move this, you can redistribute those a little bit so they're a little smoother. Okay, I use this tool all the time for fixing garbage models that I make. So it's one of my favorite tools. All right, so we've got his arm, and we know that it does need to articulate against this, so that curve is something that we're going to need to work with. So I'm going to pick this curve. I'm going to start dragging it, tap Alt. That's going to break that curve off of that edge. And then I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to stick it right very close, just a little bit of clearance. And then I'm going to isolate these guys. I've got a hotkey set up for isolate, by the way, if you're wondering how I'm doing that. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to, and it's, the reason that it's not giving me a cut icon is because there's nothing for it to cut. This is an open surface, and open surfaces can't have the cut. If I close it, it should have given me the cut for that. It didn't. So I'm going to just extrude, and then I'll use a Boolean split. And that gives me the arm. Now, it's definitely overshot down here, so I'm going to just simply draw a line, and this is oblique. The drawing is set up so that you can kind of see the end of it, but that's not really the way it would be drawn. So I'm going to just pull this over here like this, and then my cutter is showing. I'm going to hold down Shift and go in both directions, and that gives me the arm. So let's do the hand, and let's have some fun here. I'm going to turn on Auto C-Plane, and I'm going to Control-Shift-Click this face, and you'll notice that what happens is that C-Plane just stuck to the end of my arm, and my gumball is located correctly to the normal of this face. So I'm going to drag, tap Alt, and that's going to make a copy. Shift drag for scale. I'm going to put it inside the model, and then I'm going to extrude it. And that's going to give me that object. Now if I scale this, now I can adjust this, and it's scaling correctly even though that this is not oriented world XYZ. And I find that to be super, super useful. And so now I can go back to the front view, and my hand is located a little bit weird. I'm going to do that just with a tube, and I'm going to just do it from the center. And obviously if we were doing this for real, we would measure this, but I'm going to just call it done, and then bring this, and I'm going to center it something like that. And then we need to clip the grip part out, so I'm just going to come through here, draw that roughly, and I'm going to use the cutter. This is obviously way too big, so we're just going to scale it. Use gumball to snap it to the center. Take a look and see kind of how we feel about the proportions. I think I want this to be a little bit deeper like that. And then we can Boolean this up. I want to Boolean this out so that there's a gap in there. I want to make sure that my deletes are not on. so that I'm just making a hole, but I'm not getting rid of the part. And then I'm going to scale it in just a little bit for clearance. Oh, history updated. Duh. I got to kill history. I have a hotkey set up to kill history because I find that sometimes it gets in the way. There we go. So now I've got my clearance in there, and it looks like it made a copy of it. So there we go. All right, now to finish this up, I would probably go through and start doing some filleting and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna get into that today because it's a little tedious and not super fun to watch. So I'm kind of doing big picture stuff. So that gets that. We can get rid of these caps that we don't need anymore. And all that's left to do is build the little accessories. So let's build the helmet. And we can do that with a revolve. So I'm going to just, again, start from my center line here. And let's draw this way. I'm going to hold down Shift. And then I'm going to hold down Shift again. And that's going to give me a really nice 3-point corner. And then I can adjust it. Something like that. Maybe we even go a little higher. Something like that. And then let's go ahead and revolve that. And we're going to go full revolve. This is an open surface, so let's cap it. And I want this to be a wall thickness part. So I'm going to isolate this, and we can do two things. We could have started with the inside surface and then offset it using a solid, or we can shell this. And shell will probably work in this instance. Let's do, like, I don't know what kind of wall thickness I'm talking. Let's do 0.04 and see what it looks like. That's pretty thin. Let's do 0.06. And so the thickness in here, let's do that. Let's do 0.07 is a little bit better. Now, the one thing that you'll notice is the inside surface on this is pretty complex, right? So the shell command works on simple stuff. If you've used shell before and found it to be sorely lacking, you're not alone. It is a tool that has significant limitations. On stuff like this, it's going to work pretty well. On stuff like, something like really complex, you'd probably need to go through the process of shelling it using shrink wrap, and there's actually a video on that on YouTube, Never Fail Shelling on Shrink Wrap. And that would, probably get you home. So, but in a case like this, it actually works. The inside surfaces on this are pretty complex, and that may or may not be what you want. If it's not, this is what I do. I actually pull this out and I use it as a reference. Let's make sure this is all split up. And what I'm going to do is copy paste and then shift drag till it is approximately the same diameter. And you can see where the meshes start to overlap like that. That's a good indication that you're in good shape. And so I'm going to get rid of the inside, this complex surface on the inside. And that leaves me with a simple result. The problem with the simple result is these edges don't line up. So I'm just going to drag that edge. Now, you'll see what happened is it actually screwed that up. See that when I dragged it like that? So I think what I'm going to do is instead, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to allow this to not be a perfect offset. I'm going to just move this down so it matches. And I'm going to let it be just a little bit thicker at the top than it is at the bottom. I'm kind of okay with that in this particular instance. So loft between these two. Join it up. That red that you're seeing actually means that there's a backside on this, which means that we probably need to flip this guy and then join everything together. And then we've got a wall thickness part with simple surfaces in and out. And let's bring our guy back. Let's go to wireframe. We want this helmet to snap on top, so I'm going to actually draw the little socket, and that can be fairly tight. We want that to be fairly tight, so I'm going to draw it actually line to line. Let's revolve this. This is the axle that it's going to go around. We're going to do it in full. Let's go to wireframe. I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna just hack this where it intersects, because I know that that's a good spot for those two to Boolean. So let's grab this and use the cutter. Now, I made a mistake. I left everything open, so it cut everything, which is not what I wanted. So let's just do these guys, and let's cut this. I'm going to shut auto seaplane off because it's making my gumball go a little crazy. Bring this back. Now, it's still poking out a little bit, so let's hack at it from this direction. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just knock this off. Holding down shift to go in both directions. And I'm just knocking the edges off this. Now, could I have done a Boolean split and probably figured out how to do this without doing that? Sure, but then I wouldn't get to show off all the cool gumball stuff. And it looks like it's still poking through a little bit. So, let's do what we should have done in the first place, which is a Boolean split to start with. So I'm going to split this with that. And then I'm going to get rid of all the stuff that sticks out. And then we'll Boolean these two together and create that. All right, so that's going to snap on the top. So let's make the face the visor. And it looks like the visor kind of goes all the way. It's straight at the top, and it's arced at the bottom. So let's draw it how we see it first, and then we will modify it to figure out kind of how to make it land like that. So let's project these two onto the scene, or onto the helmet. And let's take a look and see what we've got. Now, this is going to project all the way through, which isn't what we want. So what I'm going to do is take these projected curves, and then I'm going to go to the front view. And I know that I kind of want my visor to do something like that. So I'm going to start kind of back here, and then I'm going to draw, and I'm going to just snap it to those. And then I'm going to bring this out. Now, because I snapped it, see how it got all wonky? I'm just going to click on this and scale to 0. And then let's project. And now I've got some curves that I can work with. So let's trim these curves. I'm going to trim that curve and that curve. And then let's clean them up just a little bit. I'm going to use blend curve, which lives in here. And I'm going to blend from here to here. And because the ends overlap, it's getting confused. So I'm going to just drag the ends the way where I want them. Shift drag to adjust both the points. And then I'm going to trim and join those. And that kind of gets me what I want. If I were to explode this curve, I could copy that part over. join this up. And now I've got essentially what I want as far as the faceplate. Now, a cool trick is I can now take this and I can flatten this by 0 and then use my cutter, and it's going to cut the original shape that I wanted through this thing. And it looks like the inside of my helmet. Ah, that was the wrong one. That was a copy left over. So let's grab the original curve again. And we'll use our cutter. And it wants to go all the way through the model. So in this case, I'm going to just make an extrusion. And let's join all this up. Looks like half of my model is inside and half of my model is outside. So let's cap this. Let's flip that guy. Now they're all facing the same direction at least. Join, cap. So it says it's unable to cap. It looks like this one's still flipped inside out. And it looks like the reason for that is there's a little mismatch down here. So let's fix that. There we go. It still doesn't like that. All right, I think there's something going on with my original curve. Let's fix the original curve. That's the right thing to do. You can see where the overlap is right there, so let's fix that. Looks like it works on this side, but not on the other side, so I'm going to just make my life easy, and I'm going to trim this in half and mirror it. No need to fight with model parts that misbehave. Then, why don't you like each other? One open. Okay, that. It's still overlapping. See that? See where the points land there and where the points land there? See? I make the mistakes so you don't have to. Let's just curve Boolean it. Make our lives easy. There we go. Boop. Now it's a closed curve. Because curve Boolean chases around that outside. So now let's bring our helmet back. And let's see if that cut works. That's the reason the cut didn't work before is, oh, see, we blew through everything. That's the reason the cut didn't work before is the curve was crap. So if you fix the curve, then all the rest of the stuff will work. So there's a little helmet. Let's make his little trophy. We can just do that with a spun object. Let's pick a center line. I always draw a center line just because it's easy. And we'll start here. All right, let's make that. Revolve surface, revolved surface, rotate it full. Let's make the little arms. I'm going to just do that with a box. Do it from the center. Center that using gumball and snap. I'm going to set my gumball to be the top, and then I'm going to snap it to the top of that. And then let's draw our little arms down here. One thing I'd love for everybody to start getting used to is to use much fewer points in your curves. So what I did right there, if you're wondering what I did, is I picked a curve, I went up here to the C-plane waffle, and I started dragging it, and then I held down Control, and that extruded out a surface. And that just gives me a little surface that I can then go here, shift drag on the extruder, and pull that out. Then I can take this, go to the front view. Oops. Oh. There we go. And then we can just Boolean all of this stuff together. Now it looks like merge all coplanar faces will help that pull together. And then if I wanted to have this open, I could just extract this surface with a copy. Shift drag to shrink it in a little bit. Bring it up so that it sticks out, and then untrim the edges. All right, and that should be a complete thing. Let's make sure it's all untrimmed. It's not. There is an untrim all up here. I'd cap this and then just scale it to whatever wall thickness I wanted, and then Boolean it out. And it made a copy, so there we go. That's a little trophy, and that's kind of our little dude. Now, we could go through and assign materials to this. Maybe I'll do that in a different video, but to wrap this up, I would probably go through and do some filleting in here. If I was to print this, this is all pretty much ready to go. You know, we'd have to do the joints, we'd have to do the connections, we'd have to do all that kind of stuff, but essentially this stuff is all ready to go. If we wanted to make some little additions to the bottom, we could use inset to draw some curves, and I'm going to do this through point. I'm just going to drag it. I'm going to drag a curve on the surface, and then I'm going to use push-pull to just push that in a little bit. And that'll give me that piece. I was planning on using inset and push-pull more, but it ended up being kind of more of a traditional build. But push-pull and inset are absolutely fantastic little tools. So if we wanted to give them some little toes, we could inset something like that, and then push-pull, give them some little boots like that. We could inset this. We wanted to give them a little bit of a detail here. Right? Just a little bit of visual interest. I find that the time I spent in the toy industry, I did a lot of stuff for Mattel, for Hot Wheels. And they used a lot of what they call nurnies and greebles, a lot of little surface details and stuff. Push-pull is like a godsend for that kind of stuff. So if we wanted to add some details to this thing, you know, we can use inset here to draw kind of what that thing is supposed to look like, and then use push-pull to just add that little bit of surface detailing. So we'll inset this face, not that one, I use the T key to get the through point, and then we'll just push pull a little bit of detail in here. Same thing over here. It's going to remember the last setting you use, so if you're doing symmetrical stuff. Okay, so we can very quickly go through and add some little extra details in there like that. All right, and then the very last thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the cuts so that I can assign some materials to the face. So let's just draw a little face on here so he's not completely faceless. And we'll draw a little circle for a little highlight. And we'll mirror that. Someone didn't draw the face very symmetrically. Curve Boolean, going to keep just that part. Got some crazy fish eyes going on there. We'll make his pupils go in the same direction. And then I'm going to take this and let's just have it mildly centered. So when you pick a bunch of objects, you'll notice that the gumball goes to the bounding box center of those objects. That's super useful. And then I'm going to pick these curves. I'm going to use the cutter to actually just make those separate pieces. Actually, I don't want to cut those. Let's do a split. So let's make surfaces out of those. And then let's do a Boolean split. And then we've got separate objects that we can then assign materials to. And we'll just throw, I'm not going to get crazy into rendering this thing, but let's just at least give him a little bit of identity. And then we'll make one more for the highlights. All right, good enough. Throw a couple little materials in here just to make them a little bit more interesting. Maybe he's got yellow arms or something. And we'll throw a medal on the trophy. And we'll hide the image. Hide the curves. Get rid of that point. And then we can just do a little ray trace on it. Race car. Any questions on any of that? Awesome. All right. I'll let you go. Thank you for joining. We got in. Do I come with a slowdown knob? Yeah, you can go on to YouTube and play it at half speed if you want to hear what nightmares sound like. But yeah, you can actually play it slower on YouTube if you want. So it'll be on our Rhino YouTube, which is Rhinoceros 3D on YouTube. This one. It'll be in the Rhino 8 playlist. This is up in here. All right. All right. If there's no other questions, I'll let you go. My name's Kyle Houchins, technical trainer for McNeil. This was Getting Started Rhino for Windows. Go make great stuff. Thanks for joining. Bye.